Welcome to the Fred Packard Show, everybody. Today I have a very special guest. I have Tonydoug Wright with me, joining me. How you doing today, Tony?
Doing well, doing well. It's a beautiful day here in Michigan, and glad to talk comics with the fellow Source Point Press creator.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. You have a lot of new books coming out, I can see.
Three, new series called Danger Devil. It was scheduled to come out next Wednesday, but with the whole COVID-19 situation, I don't know when it actually gets in stores, but it'll be in stores sometime.
It's
And
coming,
that's all I can tell
coming
people. It'll
soon,
be in
man.
stores,
I've been doing the
but
same thing on my end. Not sure.
But I mean, if you order from SourcePoint Press, you'll definitely get it in the mail, or you can definitely go to SourcePoint Press to order
Hmm.
my new series, Danger Devil. So, that's really cool. And I know stores yesterday got back with Diamond, and Back to Come Back was yesterday, and it was a good day for many stores to see their customers back at new comics. And so, it's coming back slowly but surely.
I can't wait for life to get back to normal. It's been a turbulent time to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't something happen in Michigan where a dam broke? What was that? What happened?
It was actually in Midland, the main area for our Source Point Press crew. Um, it just was raining like crazy. Past I guess like the past week or so, and river levels were high to begin with, and then the rain was just nonstop. And I knew that our side. I'm on the west side of the state, and we were getting some rain, and then on the central side and towards the east side on Saginaw, they were getting some rain as well, but their situation was much more, just much worse. And so I saw on the news that a dam had broke, but I didn't see the city that was listed. And I was like, man, that's terrible. And then I saw it was Midland. So I started getting in touch with people from Source Point Press to make sure everyone was okay. And fortunately, everyone was okay. Um, but still, I mean,
I'm pulling up a image right now.
just crazy.
That's
Yeah.
insane. Let me show this to everybody really quick. Um, the looks like a lot of water. Michigan River rises to highest level after dam break. May 20th, a dam breach in central Michigan that forced thousands to evacuate has swelled the Tittabawassee River. Am I saying that correct?
I I don't know the name of the river, so we'll go with your pronunciation on this one.
To the to its highest.
We're gonna lead. We're gonna work with Freddie on
Yeah,
this one.
to its highest level in history, forecasters said Wednesday. The earthen Edenville Dam held back the river, which reached the record height of 34 feet in Midland, the National Weather Service said. I mean, the picture just looks. That's a ton of water, man.
It's yeah, it's absolutely insane looking at those pictures.
Oh,
There's some.
wow.
There's a place. I mean, here we've got the Grand River up here in Grand Rapids where I work. That is very high right now. And then close to where I live in the Kalamazoo area, there's a city south of there, Three Rivers, also along the Kalamazoo River, and that was just that place got flooded as well. So it's just been an absolute mess. I mean, on top of everything else that's going on, it's like, okay, what else is going to happen next?
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, right? So it's like it's just one thing after the other after the other. First we have, the pandemic. Now we have killer bees or hornets or whatever they are,
Murder
murder
hornets.
hornets, and it's been nuts. Murder hornets, dams breaking,
Yeah.
earthquakes. We had an earthquake out here. I've never experienced an earthquake being in California for 7 years, and
Oh, really?
it was actually one where we had to get my girlfriend and I actually went under the table in our
Oh,
living
wow.
room or in our kitchen rather, family room, whatever the hell you want to call it, to make sure that if the house is collapsing that we're safe.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
crazy.
man.
So
We
talk to me about Danger Devil really quick. So it kind of gives me this Daredevil vibe when I'm looking at
Yeah.
it. So what was the inspiration for this book? How did you start it, and where did you get the idea? Tell me about this series.
So Danger Devil actually started as a webcomic called The Red Devil. And I was doing webcomics from 2009 until about maybe 2013, 2014, for a website called Champion City Comics. It's a site I founded. It was just going to be this springboard into the world of comics for us. But we got caught up creating quite a few original webcomic series. And at one point, I had this idea for like this John Waters sort of like teen story that it bombed. It was a totally different story. But I just kept recruiting artists to maybe resurrect that story. And I met this guy online by the name of Eric Roman. He looked at the script. He's like, yeah, that's okay. In a very polite, diplomatic way, he's like, it's not for me. What do you think about doing something a little bit more pulpy, maybe a little bit more, old school comics? And I said, sure, let's bounce some ideas together and back and forth. And we came up with the idea of the Red Devil, and it was going to be, something inspired by, the pulp comics, a little bit of like Saturday morning cartoons and like Silver Age comics. That took off. And Eric Roman, who I met as an artist online, lives in the same city that I do. So, and there was another guy by the name of Chris Smith. He's a writer that lives in the same area as well. And we'd always meet at Barnes and Noble to talk web comics. And my cousin Joe Hammerly, he lives in Austin, Texas. He got involved early with the Red Devil, doing the color and doing the lettering. Eric had to leave for another project. Joe took over and became the full-time artist. When we wanted to take it to a comic book level, we had a discussion about legal issues with the name the Red Devil. There's been characters named the Red Devil, but we also felt that there's companies and sports logos, especially like the New Jersey Devils. And then you've got Red Devil, which I think is a vacuum cleaner company. Possible ownership by Marvel or DC with the name the Red Devil. So we just decided, all right, we got to bounce some ideas together quickly. And Danger Devil came up as a name that someone threw out. We were just like, let's go for it. It's going to work. And I took the idea to Source Point Press because being with them, selling Day 165 and the Chronicles of Dr. Death, I knew there was people who enjoyed great comic book storytelling, kind of told with the Cape Crusaders superhero edge with a little bit of horror, a lot of action. And it's something for everyone in the world of comics. Once we got the story together, it just became a 3-issue series. And Danger Devil blends like Buffy, Batman, and Bond. You've got demon slayers, international organizations involved in espionage and intrigue, and you've just got just super villains replaced by super demons. So it's everything we love about comics, and it's the reason we get into comics and continue reading comics. It focuses on 2 characters, Danger Devil and her sidekick, Kid Diablo. They each have specific, Danger Devil has the ability to teleport, kind of like you get out of like Nightcrawler. So she's got these gas canisters that she uses, and she just opens them up, teleports from, area to area. Expert fighter, kind of like Daredevil. Kid Diablo is sort of that Robin sidekick. They're a pilot. They're a great fighter. They've just got a lot of witty remarks. So it's everything you love with that sort of crime fighting duo. And so it's a 3-issue series. We're very excited to release it. I've got a great crew on it. Joe Hammerly has continued to be the artist. He does amazing work. Eric Roman's been involved as well. He's the guy that did the 3rd cover for the series. Joe Hammerly did the covers and the art for issues 1 and 2. And a friend of mine, Martin Perez, who lives in South America, he does the lettering for a lot of my projects, and he's continued through with Danger Devil. So if you love great comic book storytelling, action, adventure, demons, stuff blowing up, cool superheroes, I've got you covered.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan. I have yet to read this book, but I plan on it, and I plan on ordering it from my local comic book shop. I was a big fan of Day 165, man. The premise of that is I'm a huge World War II, World War I history buff kind of guy. And that kind of appealed to me. Plus, adding in like a supernatural nerd element to it. I thought that was really cool. I'm actually going to show, here's the cover so everybody can see. of
Yeah.
Day 165. Do you want to let our listeners know a little bit about that book? Because I'd like to actually pick your brain about,
Yeah.
some history topics with you.
Sure. So Day 165, remember how I told you about the teen story that bombed and I was trying to recruit artists?
Mm-hmm.
I was recruiting artists at the time to try to resurrect that story. And another person I found was an Italian artist by the name of Giovanni Bellotti. And he also turned me down for that awful teen story, which I'm glad he did. And he said, "Hey, do you want to do something different? Just maybe a short story, 8 to 10 pages for Champion City Comics. It'll just be something cool to add to my resume and something for you to add to your resume." I said, "Sure, let's bounce some ideas back and forth." And he said, "Hey," because when he approached me, it was about 2011, 2012, war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan were still going on. He said, "Why don't we do a soldier story during the war in Afghanistan?" And I thought, okay, I'm willing to do something like that, but we kind of have to make it our own story and not do something that's on one hand like beating the war drum, but on another hand being disrespectful to people in the military. I kind of just wanted to make something unique, and he kind of put the ball in my court and said, "Just come up with something, let me know." I said, "What if we did a story in the war in Afghanistan, but just gave it a Twilight Zone X-Files type twist?
Mm-hmm.
Supernatural war stories, and maybe the twists involved get a little dark." Because when he was pitching the idea, he's like, let's just tell the life of the story, the day in war. It's like Day 165 for the soldier. And I said, that's the title right there, Day 165. We decided to make it a comic book. And he, at the time, retired from comics. I thought, oh, great. What am I going to do? Because he did the original webcomic series, 10-page story that takes place in the war in Afghanistan. But we wanted to continue the series with a World War II story. And he just dropped out completely. I thought, okay, this is not where I want to be as a comic book creator at this time, when your team kind of falls apart.
Mm-hmm. I've 100% been there. I had an artist, the first Skyland's in stores now, or going through the process. I'm kind of going through the same boat as you, right? We had our first order, and everything's pretty much on hold because of the pandemic, and for the nationwide release. And our first artist on the Skyland series dropped off, came back on, dropped off again. He was a guy who wanted to get into comics, wanted to kind of take things to the next level for his career. But as you know, comics takes a lot of patience.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of time to, one, create the book, write the book, get the art done, then to get a publisher to publish the book if anybody's willing to. If you find it's hard getting picked up, and having somebody publish your book.
Right.
So we were in that limbo where I'm a big fan of the artist's work and everything he did on the first issue, but sometimes you gotta go the distance, you know what I mean? And so we had to find somebody that wanted to go that route with us. But completely understand. People dropping in, dropping off.
Yeah, and at the time when we decided to, the first time we released Day 165 as a webcomic, it got a lot of praise as far as posting stuff as webcomics at the time. It seemed it had quite a bit of popularity as far as webcomics in general. And we had always talked about doing an anthology or doing something just to get published. And then when Kickstarter was coming around and really establishing itself as a platform for people to get money to do their own thing in the world of comics, we thought, well, we'll take something to Kickstarter. So the World War II story came up. Giovanni wasn't able to do the artwork, so I went to Joe Hammerly, who's working with me on Danger Devil now, and he's my cousin, so we've been working on comics together since 2004. When Day 165 was available to him, he just said, yeah, let's do it. And I said, let's do a World War II story. I've got the story mapped out. And I was changing jobs at the time. Our third child was about to be born. There was just a lot going on with me and with work. So I decided I'm not going to spread myself thin on a lot of projects. I brought in a writer by the name of Frank Allen. I said, here's a story for Day 165. Frank lives in England and decided, hey, let's turn this story into World War II thriller about a group of British paratroopers who go behind enemy lines after D-Day. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys in the platoon is a big comic book fan. His hero is called Colonel Joe Monroe. He's based on like Sergeant Rock and Captain America. And he's in love with American comics, and it drives his sergeant crazy. But as they're lost behind enemy lines, they just get into this moment of just pure supernatural horror. And worked with Frank, worked with Joe, Martin Perez, who goes by the name Magnus, who lettered Danger Devil, lettered that story. And at that time, I had been in contact with a group called Michigan Comics Collective. I gave them probably like an 8 to 10 page anthology story that I worked on with another artist. And Eric Roman and Chris Smith, the people I talked about earlier, when I met with them, said, hey, if you're going to do something with this Day 165 story, and if you don't want to do Kickstarter on your own, why don't you give it to the Michigan Comics Collective, because they just started this company called Source Point Press. And at first I was a little bit reluctant because Source Point Press reminded me of another company that I knew about that had started off small and was gaining some traction. But this, not Source Point Press, but this other company I won't name, really fizzled out quickly when like a key player or two just sort of left the team. But I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to give Source Point Press, and I'm going to send them an email. Let's see what happens. And once I got on board with Source Point Press, any sort of concerns that I might have had about Source Point Press were just gone, because they were doing everything the right way. They were getting into conventions, getting in the stores, getting ready to work with Diamond, hearing stuff about, Rotten Tail at that time becoming a movie. It was just like, okay, I'm with the right group of people. And once they got Day 165 printed and saw that I'd be willing to go to shows and promote the book, they just, gave me other chances with other comics. And that's what it's all about. You just can't give, especially when you're with a company like Source Point Press, you just can't give them a comic and leave, you know what I mean? And just let them do all the work. You've got to do work as well. Mm-hmm. And so
I mean, when I go to cons, and something I really appreciate about the company as a whole. First off, I mean, I think a lot of the fun of being an author is going to these conventions and and meeting people as they purchase your book, doing the book signing thing, right? Getting out there. It's been fun. I mean, you and I met in Boise, I think. No, actually C2E2. I think we met for the first time, right? Was it Chicago?
Yeah, that was. Yeah, but was that 2018? Because that was or I don't know if it was 2017 or 2018, but it was the year that you were there along with people from Comics Experience. Right. So like Frank Gogol, Devin Wong, Ken Perry was there.
Yep, that was, I think, 2018, or 2017, one of the two. Losing track of the days now, man.
But because that show worked for us, because where we were at the table, we were side by side. And you were selling Soul Survivor, mm-hmm. and I had Day 165. So we had these two stories that really worked well together for sort of bundling in a sale. Mm-hmm. And then we got back together, about a year later in Boise for Wizard World. That was a great show.
That was a great
Super hot.
I mean, first getting into the convention was one thing, but the show.
That was like the movie This Is Spinal Tap. When they get lost under the stage in Cleveland, we're kind of like walking around the entire building, and I'm trying to call David Hayes. It's 100 degrees outside.
My suitcase broke.
It
was.
Oh yeah. Oh man. It's like we. Yeah. So that was a great show.
That was one of my favorite shows, actually, in terms of. I mean, we're in this weird area in the convention.
Yeah.
And we sold out before the end of the show, literally out. Like, we had, I think, 2 comics left the next day.
Yeah.
And we were just completely sold out of every single book. Like, talk about an area starving for conventions and for things. And Boise is a beautiful area. I mean, we went and got a beer.
It was a nice city.
We had dinner.
Yeah.
It was a great time. And I can't wait to just go out and have a beer and dinner. I mean, that just sounds amazing right now to me in general. I've been...
Exactly.
But That show was actually one of my favorites because we sold out so quick, and we brought a ton of books. And getting a chance
Yeah,
to work with you and David was just an absolute blast.
yeah, it was me, you, and David Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got in at first, I mean, we had a rocky start getting in there because we couldn't find the
Yeah.
entrance, and we were kind of like, so there's the main exhibition room, and we kind of were like almost at, you know how at Thanksgiving you have the kids
Mm-hmm.
table. I kind of felt like we were at the kids table, but the room, the way we were set up, people were going from the main exhibition room into our area, and to, I'll toot the Source Point Press horn. We were selling comics left and right Friday and Saturday when I was there. I didn't really fight Sunday morning, but Friday and Saturday we were just selling books like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you do a 3-day show, Friday's going to be, a little slow, a little quiet. And Saturday is when you hit the gas. But Friday had a lot of momentum. And then going into Saturday, it just, I mean, everything we had
Everybody that came by the
nearly
table was
sold
just,
out.
yeah, everybody came by the table was like, I want that, I want that, I want that. I'm like, here you go.
Hey,
No, that
yeah,
was probably one of my favorite shows. What is that? So for me, I think Boise's up there, especially just the overall experience. There was that bike thing going on when we were there with the racers, and
oh yeah,
the old school feel of Boise was really cool. I was
such a nice city.
It is. It's clean too. It was very clean.
Yeah,
one of my favorite conventions I did was Emerald City. In terms of shows, it was a lot of fun. We went out to dinner. We had I think it's the camaraderie of like getting the group together and doing all that. My girlfriend was with us. It was nice doing that whole thing. But the city itself of Seattle, and I'm a fan of Seattle, but there was the gum road was kind of gross. That was I mean, that's one benefit of being an author and being able to get out there and do these conventions with SourcePoint Press and seeing all these new areas, meeting a lot of people. It's been a pleasure doing that. What would you say has been your favorite show that you've done? C2E2 is obviously my first show ever. Selling Out was great.
Yeah.
But what would you say is your favorite show you've done?
Man, it's hard to pick a favorite, but I've been to 2 C2E2 shows. So that first one was 2018. I was there this year, sold out this year. That was a great feeling. That Boise show was amazing because it was another time where you sell out, and even though I was leaving Sunday, I knew we were sold out. Florida SuperCon last year, I was there in Miami, and when you work in the business and you do conventions and you see shows on a holiday, it started on July 4th.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh man, 4th of July comic book convention. I don't know if we're going to get anyone in the building. But for the 4th of July in Miami, we were busy. And that show was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday show. And I was there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we were super.
That was during
busy.
Somebody scheduled a comic. What was the name of the show?
It's Florida SuperCon.
SuperCon. Okay, no, that's a pretty big one. But on the 4th of July weekend, who's scheduling a show on the 4th of July weekend? That's crazy. And being busy on one thing. Hands out to the. But it doesn't shock me because it's in Florida. Because Florida's like everything's backwards in Florida, in my opinion. They were going through a bit of a heat wave as well. I mean, Florida is hot to begin with, but a Florida heat wave, man. But I was down there, like David Hayes, Frank Gogol, Ben Goldsmith was there, and Nolan Nasser. Ben was sick for a few days. I remember that. But our location was great, and we were able to just get books into people's hands. And that was another place where people were looking for something new as far as comics. You get the fans who love, horror, supernatural, sci-fi, fantasy. You just throw in the other things that we offer with sort of like we have Westerns and sort of like historical fiction. So, and a little bit of steampunk as well. And people just see our product and they're like, okay, what else do you got? And you just bundle it all together. Also that year, I went to Comic-Con in New Mexico, the New Mexico Comic-Con in Albuquerque. That was just me and Travis. And we sold out. I think there was only, I shouldn't say we sold out, so we had like 4 items left.
but we had a
That's
table
I
full
mean, in
of
my opinion, that's pretty much selling out.
yeah.
Four
I
books usually
mean,
get damaged in travel. You know what I mean?
yeah, it was three books and a Rotten Tail DVD.
Okay.
I mean, taking that back with me and seeing like what all we put, like all that was shipped to the hotel we were staying at. I mean, you're just like, man, this is a great feeling.
Hmm.
And there's other cons I love going to, like the Grand Rapids Comic Cons I've been to, just because I live in West Michigan, and it's great to be in the community and selling in West Michigan. And I'm originally from Ohio, so I like the Gem City Comic Con in Dayton. Been there a few times. It's always great to sell there. Last time I did it, I was by myself, but some other people involved with Source Point Press had their own tables.
Hmm.
So, I mean, they're all good shows, and it's just so hard to pick one.
Do
And
you have a
it's good to have
moment
all these.
that sticks out to you throughout your career? Because you've been writing for a while. I mean, I
Right,
never did the whole webcomic thing. That always
right.
interests me in terms of you know getting a readership and people that it's so crazy how big this world is in regards, like in my mind, like there's a place for everything, you know what I mean, and there's people that
Yeah.
like these niches that you kind of dive into, and people are very much uh, it's crazy. Like, so for instance, I just got into like D&D and stuff like that, and there's so many people out there that
Okay.
are batshit crazy about D&D. And then there's the same thing like webcomics. I feel like these are very niche things,
Yeah.
but there's an audience for it. So, in your opinion,
Yeah.
for your webcomic, because you said it kind of blew up, how do you like? How was it doing? And are you still doing any webcomics, or what do you prefer, the traditional method, print distribution, or digital?
I think doing webcomics was a good stepping stone into learning how to make comics,
Okay.
learning as a writer, because I started writing comic book scripts around 2004, and I knew my cousin Joe Hammerly was an artist.
That's got to
And
be
I just
nice.
thought,
That's
hey,
got to be nice having an artist
yeah.
in the family.
So I'm writing like my first script around like 2003, 2004. And I hadn't talked to Joe since like 1989 before that point. And I'm like, I know he's an artist,
Mhm.
but I'm just going to throw it out at him. Like, are you still an artist? Are you in the comics? And he's like, yeah, man, I'm in the comics. I'm still doing art. And we just started bouncing ideas back and forth and wrote a script. And one year he took an unfinished product we had to Comic Con in San Diego. So he had a meeting with some people and got some really good feedback. But then between 2004 and 7, I got married, started a family. Joe was doing some
You
stuff as
got
well,
three
like going to
kids now?
school.
3 kids?
I've got three kids. Yeah.
I mean, how do you find the time,
So,
man? How do you find the time to do anything?
3 kids, having a family, full-time job,
Mhm.
and doing Source Point, it works itself out.
Mhm.
It's having I have a very supportive wife who believes in me and is very understanding.
Mhm.
And that's what you got to have. You have to have all the right people in your life to support you and believe in you.
Mhm.
And also, you know, when I started doing webcomics, I went into it completely just dumb, just in an idiotic state of mind, because you've watched the movie Field of Dreams,
Yeah, if you build it,
Kevin
if you
Costner.
build it, they will come.
Yeah, that's what I thought with webcomics. If I just put something on the web, boom, tomorrow there's like 1,000 people. And as I got started on that journey, it was probably around 2010 when I got a site called Champion City Comics going. People were just like, yeah, your website sucks. This sucks. That sucks. This isn't right. That isn't right. Why are you doing it this way? What? We don't like this. I don't like that. At first, I'm like, oh man, what am I doing?
Hmm.
But I connected with artists, cleaned up the website. I was using Blogger because I'm a cheapskate, and everything was kind of coming together with the webcomics. And at that time, you really didn't have anything like Patreon, or if Kickstarter was around, it was just barely getting off the ground. So a lot of people were going to webcomics, and there were a few people I knew in the webcomic world were saying print is dead. Everything's electronic now. Everyone's got a Kindle or an iPad. Print is dead. And I'm thinking, no, I don't know. I still think people like comics. But I was working on some titles. I connected with a lot of artists and other writers, and Champion City Comics did okay, but stuff like, the Chronicles of Dr. Death and what is now Danger Devil and Day 165 all started at Champion City Comics.
Mm-hmm.
So it was good to have that material there to give the Source Point Press.
Mm-hmm.
And even with Danger Devil starting over with, it's new character designs, changing the name, and just building that up. Webcomics was a great learning experience. I got away from it because it just seemed time consuming, and it just seemed like there were more holes or more hoops to jump through.
Yeah, next week.
And just a bunch.
Go ahead.
Just a bunch of added nonsense at times. Nothing to do with the people I worked with. It's just I've never done stand-up comedy, but sometimes working in webcomics and getting into the forums and promoting your work and dealing with other webcomic creators, it's a tough room.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't intimidated by it, but some days you just feel like you're just promoting a work and you're promoting a work and you're promoting a work, and you're trying different avenues of social media and you're trying to get the word out, and it's just not working. And I think we all kind of got restless at Champion City Comics after a while and decided, hey, this was meant to be a stepping stone into getting comic books printed. We can try it ourselves. And we had setbacks getting our own comics printed. And thank God, right place, right time, just getting in touch with SourcePoint Press.
I think a main thing for anybody trying to break into writing or being an author in any genre, whether it's comics, or just books in general, is just having finished work. I think is the main thing. Is there's a lot of people that just want to, you don't have to be. There's a lot of people that have great ideas. There's a lot of great artists out there. There's a lot of people out there that if they did a thing, it would probably be successful. But the main thing is they can't finish, right? So I think finishing is probably one of the most detrimental things to anything, which is if you're going to start something, make sure you finish it and commit to it. I think that is what separates somebody from taking that next step. You can have the best idea in the world, in fact have the best single issue in the world, who knows, but if you're not committed to finishing the story, you have no legs to stand on. And I think as long as you have that completed book and you have something to turn in, I think what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of publishers, just because you've actually taken the initiative to actually get it done, are going to take a look at it, because there's not a ton of completed work out there. And then the high quality work stands out when it is completed. You know what I mean? So if I was to give any advice, that's complete those books, then market them, and do that whole thing.
Absolutely right.
But that would be
because nobody wants to hear. Yeah, nobody wants to hear your idea especially at a Comic-Con. Mm-hmm. Someone walks up and got an idea for a comic.
Right.
Great. Did you develop a script? Do you have an artist? Do you have anything completed? No one wants to hear that.
How many times does that happen at a convention, right? So you'll be sitting there, somebody will up, hey man, I'm going to be creating this thing, and let me talk to you about it. It's like, I love hearing the ideas, pitch it off me, talk to me about it, but all that is bar talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I have this idea.
Yeah,
that's all it is. So when you come up with a finished book, though, you're like, hey, check this out. The art's good. The lettering's good. You're like, okay, no, I'm going to read this. I'll take a look at it, and we'll see if we want to do something. You know what I mean? There's a big difference, I think, just, having a finished product versus not. I'm working on a book right now, actually, which I'm going to be writing here a little bit later in the day. And the first issue is almost done, as opposed to pencils and inks. I'm working on it with a talented artist named Elias, and he literally is blowing me away with the work that he's putting into this. But it has to do with my Irish heritage. But the difference is when the book's done, I know, hey, here's the completed thing. You know what I mean? I know that it's most likely going to, probably either go through SourcePoint or wherever, depending on. But it's such good quality that and it's finished. You know what I mean? That's the main thing. If it was a single issue, that's done, and then you have 2 more that are coming out. It's like, okay, well, talk to me in 2 years or a year when the rest of this book's done, because the timeline. You know what I mean? So I think if anybody's trying to break in, make sure that you keep your stories smaller to start. I think would be a good good advice. Keep them smaller, 2, 3, 4 issues in that
Start
range.
with a one shot
even. I mean, day 165.
Yeah.
That book was a lot of fun, man. I mean, just having a comic book in a World War II setting, I mean, that's a lot of fun to me. Let's talk. I actually want to have a quick conversation in regards to another book that you wrote, and I think it might have some. Well, there's 2, but let's start with this one, Dr. Death, the Chronicles of Dr. Death. So, talk to me about the Chronicles of Dr. Death. What was this story about, and how do you think? Because I know that one got distributed already, correct? Before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that was released. Let's see. So it's 2020. I think it first.
Was it 2019?
I think they got it out in 20. I was working with David Hayes on that 20. So when we were in Boise, I think we were discussing getting that printed. Finally got it to him. David Hayes and Rich Bloom, also with SourcePoint Press. I owe those guys many thanks, because it's a 160 some page graphic novel. 2 stories, Dr. Death versus the vampire, Dr. Death versus the zombie. It follows sort of the anti-hero / superhero known only as Dr. Death. He has the ability to reach out with his superpowers, and he can find out what ails you. He knows what your deep, dark secrets are buried in your soul. But if he finds out that you're a vampire, a zombie, or a serial killer, he's judge, jury, and executioner, because he carries like these lethal injections and other concoctions with him to just take the bad guys out quickly. So
it's some off the wall shit,
Dr.
man.
Death.
That's some off the wall shit.
Yeah.
That's great.
I was working on it. Yeah, I was working on when I started in webcomics, I built my crew. And one of the first comic artists I met, other than Joe, I mean, I was working with Joe Hammerly, met with a guy named Victor Pazzi, who lives in Argentina. And then I met this guy, Cobb, who lives in California. Mm-hmm. Cobb wanted to work with me on a story, so we started off with this crime noir webcomic that was like 100 and God, it was 150, 160. It was somewhere in the 150 page range. And he's like, dude, when's this story going to wrap up? I'm like, I don't know, because I can't stop writing this story. It was a crime noir story called The End of Paradise. One day he sent me some artwork and said, hey, man, I'm reading, I think it was called it was like one of those monthly or quarterly publications of like science fiction stories. Mm-hmm. And there was a story called Dr. Death versus the Vampire. He said, take a look at this story. It was written by a guy named Aaron Schutz. It was a really good story. I really liked it. It was just this cool, edgy superhero named Dr. Death. Cobb said, hey, I'm going to turn that into a webcomic. And I've got permission from Aaron Schutz to turn it into a webcomic. And that's the first part of the Chronicles of Dr. Death is Aaron's story. Cobb said, hey, I've been in contact with Aaron. He's cool if we do another story. What do we do next? You'll write it. I'll be the artist. And I thought, well, man, I don't know. So we just
That's such an interesting thing, diving into somebody else's world that they built.
Yeah, that gets tricky.
That does get tricky. Especially like, so I've done that in regards to, I wrote almost like 2/3 of an issue which was initially going to be a crossover event for SourcePoint between a couple of different titles. It is tricky. In fact, I was working with David Hayes on it. It was going to be involving the Rot, and it was actually called Angel of Death. But yeah, so that is tricky because you have to do a lot of research, and if you mess up,
yes,
because especially with a well-known, whether it's a webcomic or a well-known story that's already out there that people have read, that's been distributed, you can't mess up the canon. You know what I mean?
Right.
The canon aspect of it, and then also just doing the due diligence for, essentially making sure you don't piss off the original creator. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we took, so Dr. Death in the graphic novel, Dr. Death versus the Vampire, which is the first story, is 36 pages. At the time, we just bounced ideas back and forth. Like, should it be a classic monster? Should it be something new? What are we going to do with the second story? And we decided, zombies were a big thing at the time. We could work in a zombie, give it a little twist,
Mm-hmm.
make it a little bit more of the zombie that's not um, Dawn of the Dead or George Romero type zombie, but maybe one that's controlled through a skull, like maybe through like what's called a Bokor. Let's use that. And we came up with like a 116-page story. And what I like to do with Dr. Death is say, Dr. Death versus the vampires like Alien,
Mm-hmm.
and Dr. Death versus the zombies like Aliens. It's the same. It's the same universe, but Aliens the horror movie,
Mm-hmm.
and Aliens is more the action movie version of that. So we blended the two, and in the end, we're really happy with, the Doctor Death series, and I've received some really good feedback from people, excellent feedback in some cases, and it's great to see that in print finally, because when that was completed as a webcomic series, I didn't believe it was completed, because I'm just sitting there, I'm like, we got to write more Doctor Death, because that was like a thing for us for a year. I write 5 pages, 10 pages, give it to Kov. He was just a machine. He did the pencils, he did the inks, he did hand lettering. It was in a black and white noir style. We're just like, man, we got something. We definitely got something. And once it all came together and it was over, like, we got to get this in print. And we did have someone that was interested in printing it at one time. They're like, yeah, we'll definitely take this into consideration. And they disappeared off the face of the earth. They never
Dude, it's
got
crazy.
back to
That's
us.
another
So
thing, just to kind of talk about. I don't think people realize how hard it is to physically publish and distribute a book. There's a lot of moving
yeah,
parts that goes into it, right? So, I mean, to me,
you can just do something at Kinko's, just put something together,
mm-hmm.
very simple. And people do that at shows, and I've seen it, and you know, it,
I think quality matters.
doing
Though. I
that
mean,
is
the in terms
yeah,
of, I mean, handing it out and having people read your work, that's one thing, and getting feedback for
yeah,
sure. But comic
yeah,
collectors, they are so particular about the quality of the book, the paper, the ink, the weight of the
yeah,
page, things of that nature. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. Let alone, are you printing the 85-pound to 70-pound interior? Like, or is it
right,
the color, the tons of things that actually goes into the actual creation of the book. Then getting that thing and then distributing that thing and trying to get as many eyes on it so you can start. It's all about the next medium for a lot of these things, right? A lot like converting
yeah,
your story to whether it's live action or animation, or at least for me, that's kind of what my views are. Is you start with this thing, you get a fan base, they love it, and then they want more of it, or they want it at a different medium. You know what I mean? So, what do you think?
yeah.
Any of your stories you'd like to see converted over to animation, live action, or have you ever gave any thought to that?
I have, and there was um, interest in Day 165 to be. I mean, there was interest in it being live action. The I guess the it just went. It was just in the someone's interested stage.
Right.
It didn't go a step beyond that. But yeah, I mean, Doctor Death, Day 165, Danger Devil, they could all go somewhere. I mean, Doctor Death's definitely live action like Day 165. Danger Devil definitely. I'd like to see that in animation,
Mm-hmm.
but if you do live action, that would be awesome as well. So you definitely think about it, but you don't know what's going to happen next or who's going to get picked up, because people from Source Point Press have been picked up for different projects, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean next level projects, whether it's film or animation. Um, that's always something that could come up if the right person gets their hands on your work.
Right. I think what's interesting is, I mean, you have Franklin and Ghost, which is getting an animated
Yeah.
television show. You have Nora, which is Casey Pierce's series,
Yep.
which is getting
Monstrous.
monstrous. A lot of different things are taking that next level. interested to
Yeah.
see what else does. I think that's always the kind of the hope as a creator. You've gone over a lot of challenges that you've gone through to get to where you're at. I mean, webcomics, artists dropping in and off.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that kind of just shows to you're pushing through. I mean, this is something that you want to do. This, you're making your place in this industry, and I think that's
Right.
really, it's really empowering to hear, everything that you've gone through to get where you're at. And now you're reaping those benefits. Like you said, you had multiple books distributed at this point. You had Day 165, Doctor Death,
Yep.
and then you also had Danger Devil, and now you're also.
Right.
Did you have what? Who did Plague Doctor for?
That was David Brown.
David Brown.
That I know that was a very successful.
Especially now with everything going on.
Yeah. It was a successful. I know it was a successful Kickstarter. Like I know stuff like Samurai Grandpa and The Misplaced. I'm very certain those had successful Kickstarters as well.
Did Misplaced. That hardcover book is gorgeous, by the way. I don't know if you ever got your hands on it.
I don't know if we were selling it in Boise, but I've done some other shows and
it's a hot seller.
People see the book. Yeah, it can sell. It's one of those books. You definitely see those with Source Point Press. Certain titles, very specific covers, and people are just like, I'm going to buy it. Like Made Up Zombie Clown Circus.
Yeah.
People see that. They're like, that's mine. That's mine. I want it. We had, The Misplaced. If you get the right con and the right kind of crowd, that's a good seller too. Franklin and Ghost, I always, when that first came out, I read it, and when people come up to the table, it's one of those things they go right to. Now we've got Sham Comics by Tim Fuller, and that's great as well because people see the old, Golden Age, like Silver Age comics, where I think the copyrights expired. Or the rights are not there, and Tim just took it and just completely riffed the comics. And when people see that, they're like, "I want that."
What is it? Which one?
And it's the Sham Comics, or they call it he's got the trade paperback, the Shamabus.
Yeah,
Shamnabus.
Shamnabus. Yeah.
It's just those old comics, man. It's brilliant. Like it's one of those things where I sit back and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Just find these comics where the licensing is gone. No one has the rights to it anymore, and just rewrite these stories and just make them just completely inappropriate, off the wall, crazy stories that are just so funny.
What in terms of genres, because you kind of jumped from, I think you play a lot on the supernatural aspect of things, and then also like you like to put a little bit of a realism, like in terms of
a little bit
for some of the titles that you've written. What genre have you not written in that you would love to write?
For comics, I guess I would like to do something more humor based. I have like ideas to go with, and it's just a matter, especially at this time when you can't get to a con and distribution's at a certain place. I've thought about making a move to do something a little bit more comedy based, and how to do that and what type of genre. I mean, what kind of setting to have for that story. I've always wanted to write humor. It's something I know I can write. But true crime is something else that I really like. And so those would be the two right there. There's other genres, there's certain types of stories.
When you say true crime, like you're saying like something in regards to like a crime that's actually happened that you would like to actually take.
Yeah, like
is there a particular crime?
There's something I'm interested in right now. I've been doing some research on, and it's that moment of kind of working on that at this point and trying to see. I'm not talking too much about it because I've got to get like interviews and stuff going with some people, but it's like, okay, is this going to be a novel or is this going to be in a graphic novel format?
What kind of crime? Do you mind, if you don't mind me asking?
A disappearance.
So like a kidnapping, or?
No, it's a disappearance and
It's not about the
of
Tiger King's
the,
husband or whatever
oh
that was.
yeah, no, it's something that's happened in the past like 40, 50 years. So that's another thing about, when you learn about a genre, what works, what doesn't work.
Mhm.
Um,
I think something like
because,
that. It
talking
depends.
about
It
date.
depends. I feel like there needs to be some sort of an action element to comics, or like some sort of
Yeah,
movable. Like, it's hard to do super tense in a graphic novel or comic format,
right.
because then it's just a lot of faces, a lot of dialogue, and a lot of slow burning. That's difficult. I feel like it's
Yeah,
doable. It's just difficult.
yeah.
It depends on the type of.
Because yeah, because you can kind of like when you're working on something, you can say, okay, I know how to make this into a true crime novel, but do I want to take the challenge to a whole other level and try to make it a graphic novel?
It's definitely doable. I
It's
think you just
it,
have to do it in a very smart way, where it's like you have the
yeah,
serious side, which is them trying to uncover it, but maybe you go back to whatever was happening, like a flashback or whatever it was, and you show. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I think that could be kind of cool. But yeah, I think true crime has a place in comics for sure, and I think that's kind of, I don't even know if you need the rights for that or how that even goes into, or if you could just take your spin on it, I guess.
yeah. I know certain situations you're going to get into the rights, um, but I think usually when it comes to the rights, I think of things like maybe the O.J. Simpson case, or that for that right there. I mean, but again, writing about a true crime, I think I've done some legal research. There are ways you can write it
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, hey,
You could just do based off true events or something of that nature.
yeah, you can kind of give your opinion on what happened,
Mm-hmm.
and by doing that, you sort of put yourself in a different position where it's like, well, I'm just telling you what I think happened. I'm sort of analyzing it myself,
Right.
and doing my own work,
There was a
rather than
guy, I forget
investigating it.
who it was. I mean, there was. I mean, if you ever watch Zodiac Killer or what have you, but it could become
Yeah,
becomes an obsession for some people, right? So it's like you get into like
yeah,
this true crime thing where you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna try to, like, while you're doing it, you're uncovering clues, and you're like, well, how did nobody put this and this together? And it's kind of interesting where it's happened in the past where people were writing something and they actually end up solving the mystery. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it depends on how deep of a dive you want to get into if you're just looking at it from a narrative point of view.
right.
But I think that's very interesting, and I would love to read whatever you got cooking. I'm a huge, I love
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
it's like first off, you got to do the information gathering, and that can be a bit tedious. And you run it, and then you've got to definitely get in touch with people involved with the case, if depending on the year that the crime happened,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got to get them to participate in a way. And so there's all of these hurdles you got to jump over, and it's not easy, but it's a good challenge, and I'm not afraid of a good challenge. So
Definitely not,
um,
man.
I'm very excited about it, and like I said, it's something that's cooking right now, and I see it more going in the novel format just because, but you just have certain days where you're like, man, you kind of get tempted by the graphic novel layout. You're like, wait,
It's just you
stick
keep
with what
going
you're
back
doing.
to it because
Do
you
that
see the
now.
visual in your head, and I think that's the easiest way to
Yeah,
kind of to show people what you got going on. Now, the novels and graphic novels are two completely different animals. Both, honestly, in
right.
terms of, I love the analogy that somebody once gave to me was a novel is so much cheaper to write, but a lot
Yeah,
more in terms of a lot more time goes into it for a writer.
right,
Whereas a graphic novel is a hell of a lot harder to put together because you have so many different
right.
people's hands in the pot. It's more of a
Yep.
collaboration, unless you're the writer, the artist, the letterer,
Yeah,
colorist, all that together. And it's a lot more expensive to put together for that matter.
yeah. Oh
So it's
man, because when you got one graphic novel under your belt, it's just like I was very lucky. It was me and the artist who was not only doing pencils but inks and letters.
Mm-hmm.
And man, you got to get into those situations where you're very fortunate, because some people get a penciler, an inker, a colorist, a letterer, and sometimes you've got more than one writer. And I've never worked on any project with another writer, so I can't imagine how that goes at times, especially when you've got maybe certain conflicts or differences of opinion. So, ooh, that's a whole other beast right there.
Yeah, I write a lot of my books with other people as well. It is a lot, and I'm very much this way, and while they're this way, and then normally when you meet in the middle, that's when you find the best thing. So let's see here, Tony. What do you got going on in the future? What do you want people to know, and where can we direct them to find your work?
So right now, I'm just basically getting people into their local comic book store, or go to SourcePoint Press online and get their issues of Danger Devil 1, 2, and 3. That'd be the complete series, all 3 stories. I'm hoping to see Danger Devil issue number 1 in the local comic book store. I don't think it'd be next week, but maybe within, sometime in the next 4 to 6 weeks, it'll be in a store. That's just guessing and guesstimating on my part, not really knowing much about Diamond distribution at this time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's really what I want to push right now. If you're looking for a great comic book story that just blends the just awesomeness of Saturday morning cartoons with great comic book storytelling and action adventure from what you saw like in the Silver Age of comics, you're going to get that out of Danger Devil. And once that's completed, I've got some other ideas going, but at this point in time, with everything that's going on with COVID-19, I don't want to commit to anything, because you kind of want to see how everything's going to play out, just due to the fact that we don't have conventions right now, and you really are kind of in unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. I think a lot of things have changed. I was having this conversation with Ben, where I think the small, medium conventions, they're going to have a tough time. The large conventions I think are still going to go on, but they're going to have to do things differently. And
Tampa Bay wants to do their Comic-Con in July. Was it July they want to do their Comic-Con, or June? And
Florida wants to have one too. I mean, there's a couple of places that want to. That's the we're thinking the same one. I find it interesting. I mean, San Diego Comic-Con obviously got canceled. I was really looking forward to that. The Skyline debut was going to be huge. I was like, in terms of the trade. So I was personally looking forward to San Diego, LA. We were going through the same boat, man. We have all these books coming out during the middle of this pandemic. But the only thing I can say is call your local comic book shop, order your books. You know what I mean? And if not, go to sourcepointpress.com, pick them up from there. They're shipping. And
that's the way to do it.
Have you been homeschooling your kids?
Here in Michigan, they've got lessons that are doing a little bit of like online learning. So my 2 older kids, my son, who's the oldest, he's 12. He's getting homework assignments on a daily basis from his teachers. My daughter, my oldest daughter, who's 9, she's in the same situation where her teachers are sending videos and there's lessons they can do online. And we'll set time aside for them. With my daughter, we'll set time for her to do certain projects or certain assignments. My son, he'll just wake up in the morning and just do all his homework, so he has more time to
awesome.
Jump on the PlayStation with his friends. And my youngest, she's hitting into young 5s, and so we don't know what's going to happen for all 3 of my kids. There's ideas that are getting bounced around, and we're not really going to know anything for a while. One school district, I think, in Michigan's coming up with an idea of maybe just having kids in school 2 days a week, 1 day online.
I don't see I mean, personally, it is hard, especially for parents right now with everything going on. I couldn't even imagine. New York Governor Cuomo was saying that he thinks that the kids should be schooled at home. I'm like, well, how the hell are the parents supposed to work? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah. I
I'm like, it's
mean,
crazy because it's like you got to go back. Businesses are opening back up. People now have their kids at
yeah,
home. Schools are closed. It's a crazy time, man. I'm just hoping, praying that things get back to normal here soon, and in a healthy way. I hope things open up slowly, but do things smartly.
yep,
We'll see how it goes, man. I just hope everything
yeah,
for the
definitely.
best.
And I've got a great full-time employer that allows us to work at home.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's continuing for I don't know how much longer, but they'll let it continue. And I know many parents are in a state of uncertainty right now.
Mhm.
So it's, a lot of us, as like in the comic book creating world, especially the smaller publishers, we don't know what's happening. We're in unfamiliar territory. A lot of people are doing things online. Comic book stores are going online with like Facebook auction,
Mhm.
or sales nights. It works very well, and so it's a new way to sell comics. And so I'm trying to be more online savvy with trying to sell comics and getting that done instead of just being con savvy and getting a comic book sold there. So
I mean,
it's
honestly, I think
it's
it's good to
a new place.
It's kind of like a portfolio, right? You got to diversify, right? So
Yeah,
I think if you need to have multiple revenue streams as a creator, I think online is definitely important for sure for a lot of
yeah,
people. And I think SourcePoint has been doing a really good job staying afloat, pushing the narrative forward. They've found different ways to get their books still in people's hands. I think they're
yeah,
doing all the right things to get through this. I think they're going to come out even
yes.
stronger. I really do.
Absolutely, and that's why I love working with SourcePoint Press, because they're not going to give up. They're just, all right, what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this? So I have a lot of great people to work with, including Josh Warner, who's been a huge help with he's been a huge help for me and for Joe getting the Danger Devil comic
Mhm.
ready for print. So got people like Nolan and Elle who I've been working with on some ideas, and you can always bounce ideas off of Travis and get his input on stuff. And even with my true crime novel, I've been able to work with David Hayes and get some ideas from him. So there's so many resources with SourcePoint Press, and so I whatever I can do to give back to them for all the help they've given me, I'm more than willing to do that.
Oh yeah,
So it's
it's part of the reason why
it's awesome being part of.
with the time that I had, I wanted to start because you miss the connections you have with all the creators at the different conventions. So I wanted
Right.
to kind of spotlight you guys, let the world know what you got going
Thank you.
on. And I'm going to keep. I mean,
Yeah.
ideally, this podcast is going to be all over the place in terms of I'm going to bring on not just authors but other types of doctors or nurses and people, scientists,
Yeah.
whoever, right? As long as they have something interesting to talk about, I want them on, right? So I think you have a
Hey,
lot of interesting things
just
going
do it.
on. So, where on social media do you want people to find you, Tony?
So you can follow me on Instagram, Champion City Comics. You can also follow me on Twitter, Tonydoug Wright. Uh, I'm on Facebook, Tonydoug Wright, and you follow me, you'll find out more about Danger Devil, Day 165, Chronicles of Dr. Death. Go to SourcePoint Press, look up Danger Devil, Chronicles of Dr. Death, and Day 165. Check out the comics, fill up your cart, talk to your local comic book store, get some comics, show some love. That's all I can tell you.
Absolutely, man. I hope to see you soon. I hope to see you at a convention.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. I wish you all the best of luck during these crazy times, my man.
Hey, you too. I hope all goes well for you, and it's good to see you again in an electronic kind of way. So take care, and good luck with the Fred Packard show.
Absolutely, brother. Take it easy. Thank you.